How's it going, guys? David here with another Dark Spider David segment. This time I wanted to talk about something that I encountered for, I believe, the second time within the past couple of years in a video game that I just do not like. Most especially because of how unethical it could potentially get from this point forward. I wanted to talk about Endgames. Endgames in video games are segments in the game that are leading up to the climax or leading up to that final moment in the game where you get that final cutscene. And most recently, an endgame term applied to a video game is basically a section in the game where it takes you through what I guess you could kind of assume as a gauntlet. And it makes you do these things that are otherwise considered rudimentary or side activities, but it makes you go through this large chunk in the game that is just one thing after another that is kind of built upon the method of repetition so that you can get to the actual final stage of the game. And I can't mention this whole concept of endgames without mentioning the two examples that I've came across this within the past couple of years. The first one, and no spoilers here for the story, but there's going to be spoilers for the structures of these games, the way that they were kind of built. So I'm not going to go into story spoilers, but I'm going to be mentioning some things that happen within the game in terms of how it's built and how it's structured and how you come across certain things in the game. But nothing within the plot or the story am I going to ruin for you, so you don't have to worry about that in relation to Batman Arkham Knight and Shadow of War, Middle-earth Shadow of War. Those are the two games in which this happened to me. In Batman Arkham Knight, you finish the main plot and you get the cutscene, and a few things are left to the imagination. They're somewhat left ambiguous for the player to decide whether or not something happened or not. So that's where I'm going to leave it. However, once you beat the game and those credits roll, the game then tells you that if you want the true experience, or in this case the true ending, that goes a little bit further and beyond, careful how I use those words there, then you're gonna have to 100% the game. And to do this, you have to not, obviously you already completed the main story, so you don't have to really worry about that, but you do have to worry about the side activities. And for the most part, the side activities are nothing to really kind of worry about, because not only do you get rewarded with doing these missions that are very diverse from one another, but you also get to encounter some classic Batman villains from his rogue gallery of enemies, from Two-Face, Penguin, all that stuff. And so they have like little mini stories kind of woven within them, and I love side activities, side missions like that. So I was like, okay, cool, let's do this. I open up the little window, and lo and behold, one of those enemies that you need to take under in order to 100% of the game is the fucking Riddler. And what is the Riddler known for in these Arkham games, primarily from Rocksteady? It's those fucking trophies. I remember looking at the amount of trophies that you have to go through in order to 100% Arkham City, and I was like, nope. Immediately I was like, nope, not doing this. However, you do have to do the exact same thing in Arkham Knight. Collect all his trophies, do all of his racetracks, because that's a new implementation in Arkham Knight because of the inclusion of the Batmobile that an awful lot of people had issues with to begin with. So now you have to do these races, and it was just very trivial, and I was like, I cannot do this, because you have to get through this, and once you do that, then you get the true ending cutscene that is very much similar to the original, but after the moment that was left ambiguous, you then get something else that is also kind of ambiguous, but it kind of fleshes certain things out. And so then you get your true ending cutscene. The second example, which is actually very much recently because it's from a game that came out this year, was Middle-earth Shadow of War. And it was already raising some controversy with its inclusion of microtransactions and the loot crate system with the market and all that stuff. But then some articles came forward saying that the ending cutscene was locked behind an end game segment in the game. And at first I didn't really know what they were talking about, but then when I actually looked up the definition in relation to video games, the first thing that popped into my mind was from 2 years back, Arkham Knight, that did the exact same thing. So I was like, oh god, I really hope that this is not as tedious as collecting those trophies. No, it might be worse, because in Shadow of War, and again, no story spoilers, but I am going to kind of break down the structure, you get a cutscene that was actually rather awesome because it felt very Empire Strikes Back. I mentioned this in my review. The ending cutscene or semi-ending cutscene that you get was rather cool, and at a moment I thought that the game was going to cut to black and the credits were going to start rolling and it was going to end in that cliffhangery type of way that made me kind of really excited for the third game in the series from this developer, Monolith. And then it progresses, and you jump back into the shoes of Talon, except certain things have been changed. And again, no spoilers, but there's a significantly different dynamic going on with the way that you interact with Middle Earth. And at first I was like, okay, this is brand new and different, let's see where this goes. And then the game says, oh yeah, you want that ending cutscene that actually fully resolves this conflict that just arose from that first cutscene that you saw that felt very Empire Strikes Back and made you think that nothing was going to be the same as it was. Not only that, but you're going to get a cutscene that resolves that and also ties it in to the Lord of the Rings mythology. You're going to have to be going through what this game calls the Shadow Wars. And the Shadow Wars are, without getting into too much detail, because I can't even show gameplay of this because there's a little detail in there that's a little spoilery, so I'm not going to say what it is or show clips of it. But basically, the siege missions that are revolving around these fortresses, that it's one of the brand new mechanics of Shadow War, which were rather fun and engaging and exciting because it feels like you're going through these like war sequences from the Lord of the Rings movies. You have to do them over and over and over again because there's 10 stages in the Shadow Wars, and the first 4 include 1 fortress per stage. Okay, sounds easy enough. But then once you get to stage 5, 6, and 7, you do 2 fortresses per stage. And there's only 4 fortresses in the entire fucking game. So that means that you're going to be revisiting some of these fortresses over and over and over. Then in stage, I think it was 8 and 9, you're doing 3 fortresses. And then finally in the last stage, you do all 4 back to back to back to back. Oh, and did I mention that every time you do a new fortress, the orcs get even stronger and more deadly to the point where you're like, how the fuck am I supposed to do this? Because you're earning XP at a rather slow rate, and yet these orcs are jumping like 5 levels. To like they're at level 70 by the end of the fucking thing. And the reason for why this is a little infuriating and why I'm bringing up this concept of endgames and why I think that they're a little nefarious possibly and possibly unethical, and why I feel kind of scared that more games are going to start doing this at a much more progressive and frequent rate from this point on, is because of Shadow War. Arkham Knight felt a little bit more innocent because it's just a matter of 100%ing the entire game, and that's all you really have to do. Whereas Shadow War, there's no other way to really put it. Their incorporation of that market and those loot crates and all that different type of stuff is what makes me apprehensive. Because these orcs, like I said, started to get a little too strong beyond reasoning, beyond logical reasoning, that it made me go, oh, I know what you're doing. You want me to go and buy fucking shit from the market so that I can get to that ending cutscene, which I can easily just look up on YouTube. Now, here's the deal. I tried doing this gauntlet under Shadow War. I tried doing this shit, but over time, I knew it was possible, but here's the deal. It was only going to be possible if I lowered the difficulty. I had to lower the difficulty. I went from normal to easy, and that was the only way I was going to be able to do it. And even then, it was still posing a big enough challenge that I was like, okay, yeah, I just overcame this fortress. Now I have to do this shit 7 more times. And it's going to get stronger from this point forward that I just got worn out. I don't want to say that I broke down, but I just said, fuck this. I looked back at myself. I looked at myself in the metaphorical mirror, and I thought, all of these hours, because you're going to be spending hours. This isn't a thing that I can easily do in like 2 or 3 hours and then boom, I'm done. No, this is going to take up almost the amount of, at least half of the amount of time that I spent on the game already. I wrapped the game up until to the point of that cutscene that I thought was going to be the final cutscene, but it wasn't the final cutscene. It took me about 20 hours to get to that point. And I knew that I was going to spend another 10 or even 15 on this last segment of the game just to get a 4-minute cutscene. And maybe a trophy. And looking back at it, I was like, no, I could be spending this time playing another game, a completely different game, that I might end up having much more fun with. Because guys, if you're not having, guys and girls, and I mean guys in the general term, if you're not having fun playing a game, you need to recognize that sweet spot where you go, I'm done. I'm done. I can't be playing this anymore. I'd rather be playing something else that I want to have fun in. And I finally came to that realization with Shadow War, and I was like, no. And I'm scared that more games are going to start taking this methods, taking this structure, and start putting it into their games, because with Arkham Knight, again, it was innocent because there were no microtransactions. There was nothing. If anything that you had to pay for, it was either challenge maps or simply just skins, costumes, you know, to make Batman look like he did in Nolan's Batman or whatever. But besides that, it wasn't about increasing his stats or getting upgrades. That was all built within the game. That was all based on skill. Whereas Shadow War, there's that loot crate system in that market. So what's going to stop other companies from looking at that model and being like, you know what? Maybe we could do that. Let's take that ending cutscene, literally take a pair of fucking scissors, chop it in half, and then put the first half where it's supposed to be, and then that second half where it's supposed to be along with that first half, they're gonna put it and lock it away behind this hefty chunk in the game where they're gonna make you go through this fucking gauntlet where you have to do shit over and over and over, and it's gonna get so hard, even on easy difficulty, to where they're gonna be like, oh, you wanna beat it? Then give us a little bit of that moolah, just so that you can get that one sword or that one piece of armor. I'm hoping to God that that's something that's not going to be supported, and of course, we have the final say here because we're the gamers, and I think we need to start paying attention to reviewers in that sense. And I understand that there's going to be those games that you want to buy day one. I have my fair share of games that I would love to play day one, no matter what reviewers say or whatever, but I choose selectively, and this year has been no exception. Injustice 2, unfortunately, Shadow of War was one of those games, but I had to learn the hard way. And so after experiencing this for the very first time and noticing that I was being potentially played here, I'm definitely going in much more apprehensive, not only with WB's games here within the remainder of the Shadow series, Middle Earth series, but also other games going into 2018 that look like they might have that similar model, especially when you start seeing certain words like microtransactions, loot crate, markets, anything like that. I'm gonna wait for the reviews. I don't think I'm gonna be getting these games day one, because if they're gonna start adapting this model where they're gonna be taking something that is essentially part of the fucking plot and just locking it away behind this paywall, behind what could ultimately turn into a paywall because of how hard how hard and repetitive they end up making it, then something's gonna burn down. Okay, rant over. Please let me know your guys' thoughts and opinions on this matter. If you played Shadow War or even Arkham Knight from 2 years back and noticed that gauntlet or end game model in there, and if you noticed it from other games, because I'm pretty certain that there's been other games that I've overlooked that have been released within the past few years that have adapted that similar model. Please let me know your guys' experiences. Do you think that did you feel let down noticing that they said, oh yeah, we have this other secret cutscene, the secret ending, but the only way to get to it is if you 100% the full game doing these things that you know you don't want to be doing, and you shouldn't need to be doing because it should be optional? And do you think that you're being played here, or do you think that something a little bit weird is going on, especially if they're incorporating microtransactions? Any kind of experience you had with this matter whatsoever in the gaming community, please let me know in the comments. Make sure you support this video by hitting the like and share. According to the YouTube algorithm, the more likes, the more attention this video gets, and I think this is a matter that should get attention. And if you want to show your support for the channel, then please do so by hitting the subscribe button down below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, guys, take care. Go back to the difficulty. Go back to the difficulty. I want to show you something. You notice how much of a drop off there is between the colors right there if you keep going to the right.
It goes doop 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 doop.
Yeah.
I wasn't even paying attention to that.
Really? You just noticed right now?
I'm sorry, I don't pay attention to things like that.